Thank you. And I want to welcome all the new graduates from a unique and uniquely successful program of studies from bachelor to master. LPS is home to students who come from all corners, literally all corners of the world, and even more important, from diverse experiences and backgrounds. There are students that overcame poverty, disability, and most important, fear of success. Well, here you are today, successful. Like many of you, I was not born in the United States. In fact, I came here 30-year-old, so quite old. Every place, from a country to a small group, has implicit rules that govern it. I had to learn many of them, many new norms, many new rules, sometimes at a personal cost. Now, this experience led me to study social norms, how they influence behavior, and how they can and sometimes should be changed. Often, the norms that rules our behavior are inefficient or even damaging to human development. Think of child marriage, which is very, very common in many African countries and Southeast Asia. Think of corruption. There are, believe it or not, norms of corruption in a lot of different countries, norms of corruption. Or female genital cutting, I worked on that. And again, this is something that is often dangerous and potentially, very, very harmful to the life of the women that get cut. So to understand how to change this norm, how to change these rules, we need to understand two things. First of all, what motivates people to behave in this particular way? What is the reason? Why do they do that? And second, how behavior can be changed. Now, since much of our behavior is grounded on beliefs, on expectations about what other people that matter to us are going to do or have done, expectation about what is approved or disapproved of, we can ask, the first question to ask is, how can we change people's expectation? Now, sometimes it's easy. I want to give you a simple example of what we call in psychology pluralistic ignorance. Here I have a lot of students around me, so they probably know this experience. You are in a classroom, and the professor is explaining very, very difficult concepts, and you really don't understand. You look around. Nobody raises a hand. Nothing. So what do you infer? Well, I am the only idiot that doesn't understand what the professor is saying, and most other people, probably everybody, nobody's raising the hand, they do understand what's going on. So I do not raise my hand. And the problem in this situation is that many people, maybe a majority, do not understand what the professor is saying, but they fear being put at a disadvantage, raising their hands. And this classroom example is a typical example of a situation in which transparent communication is not possible. We observe what other people do, and we infer that they do that not like us because we are afraid to look like deviants, but they do it because they prefer to do it. They want to do it. They like to do it, okay? And therefore, we do it, and we continue to permit to a certain behavior, often a bad behavior, to survive. College drinking has been another problem. And it's interesting because a solution may be to run a survey among college students asking them whether they really prefer to drink that heavily or not. And this was done at Princeton, actually. And the survey showed that most students didn't enjoy or like to drink so much, but they felt compelled because they look at other students and so on and so forth. And this is a case of pluralistic ignorance. How can we change people's behavior and beliefs? In this case, it's simple. We just make clear the data, what real beliefs and preferences are. However, there are many more difficult cases in which belief change is really difficult to attain. Think of tax compliance. Suppose you live in a country, like my country, Italy, where it's well known that many, many people don't fully pay their taxes. And what will you do? And we know that when behavior is perceived as common, in the end, is also perceived as acceptable. This is a real serious problem. So common equal acceptable. And so what can we do here? We cannot cheat people saying, no, it's not true, 80% pay their full taxes, because people know it's not true. So the only way to give truthful information and hopefully change behavior is to highlight areas or cases of good behavior, and of course its advantages, because people won't change behavior until and unless you give them a good reason to do that. So you have to highlight the advantage of good behavior. Now, I am not trying to lecture anybody today, but I say all this because all of you will either go back to your previous job or eventually find a first job. Each workplace has its implicit rules and norms. And you will have to be able to understand that sometimes how things have always been done is not the optimal way. Even more important, you must come to realize that even well-meaning people have biases, usually unconscious, that prevent change. For example, organizations now typically want more inclusion. Now, the problem is that even if we hold egalitarian norms, we might still discriminate along race and gender whenever situations are uncertain or ambiguous. So we have to watch out for that. We want diversity, but sometimes it is hard to achieve it. Social psychology studies something that I'm very interested in. It's called aversive racism. And what is aversive racism? An aversive racist is a person who holds egalitarian norms and is unaware of his or her negative beliefs and feelings toward minorities. And there are several experiments which I think are great. They have been done a few years ago, in which, for example, they divide liberal and conservative party members in Brooklyn. And what they do, they receive a phone call, either from a white person or from a heavily accented black person. And the person asks for assistance. Can you please call a service garage? I finished my quarters. Now, again, the caller can be black or white. The responder can be liberal or conservative. As far as help goes, the liberal equally helps blacks and white. The conservative helps white much more than black. However, this is the interesting thing. Who are the people who hang up immediately when they hear an African-American voice? The liberals. So the conservative hang up between 5 and 8%, depending black or white. The liberal hang up only 3% of the time when they hear a white voice, but 20% of the time when they hear a black voice. So it's very interesting. This is what you call aversive racism. If they go on with the call, they will help, but they don't want to go on with the call. But it is something very immediate. It's not that they stay there and think about what to do. And when interviewed, both groups, conservative and liberal, reported they would help irrespective of race, and they are sincere. The problem is they don't. Again, the situation must be somewhat ambiguous, unclear. Another problem to be aware of is what we call self-fulfilling prophecies. This is important if we have unconscious biases. Why? Our expectations guide our behavior. So we influence, when, for example, in an interview, we talk with a target person, we are influenced in the question we ask, in our physical, psychological attitude, and so on and so forth. We're influenced by our expectation, but our behavior influences the response of the target person. We have a strong influence on that. And this person will be induced to behave in ways that confirm our expectation. So it's a really bad, vicious circle. Now, to change our belief and biases, we need constant exposure to diversity and differences. And Penn, I must say, has made a tremendous effort in this direction. I hope you will all be agents of change, well aware that the first, most important change has to occur within ourselves. Your graduation today is your first step towards this goal. Thank you.